It's time for this week's UpLift. 3 ordinary guys that want you to find the freedom that is available by knowing our Lord Jesus Christ. So sit back and enjoy UpLift, brought to you by the Fulcrum Center. Visit our site at thefulcrumcenter.org.
Well, looks like we're missing somebody again.
I guess so.
This is a real common theme for us.
It is, and guess what? I won't be here next week. But that's okay.
Yep.
You know, it's still good.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, Ian couldn't be with us tonight. Something came up, but he's with us in spirit.
Yeah, he's riding the storm out.
Yeah, riding the storm
We're
out.
experiencing some storms here in the last couple days, and more is going through tonight, so you might hear a clap of thunder, but that's okay.
And if the video just suddenly ends, because the power went out.
Yeah.
So, if we don't get to say, see you next week, we'll do it now. See you next week. All right, so, I got a topic for us to talk about tonight.
I bet you do.
Well, last week when we got together, we had mentioned free will. And, you know, I can't remember which one of us said it, but one of us said, you know, that might be a good topic for UpLift sometime. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about free will. Because we know that the Bible tells us that we have free will. We look at the story of Adam and Eve, and God said, you may eat of any tree in the garden, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. Mm-hmm. He made a command, a commandment. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Mm-hmm. For when you do, in that day you will die. Mm-hmm. So that tells us right there, and the fact that they did it, God did not compel them to not eat from that tree.
That's right.
He gave them a choice. Mm-hmm. They can choose to eat from that tree, or they can choose not to. Mm-hmm. And the moment they chose not to, they died in that day. Now, not right away.
Right.
But they died.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because they no longer were immortal, I should say. They were never eternal. Mm-hmm. Eternal means no beginning, no end. They were no longer immortal at that point. They would suffer death. Mm-hmm. Because the wages of sin is death, and disobedience to God is sin, and doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that math out. So, anyway, I thought we'd maybe discuss that tonight. You up for that?
I'm up for it.
All right.
Yeah, I'm up for it. Yeah, so I mean that was an interesting thing, and I heard a teaching recently about all this, and they said, everything that you just said, and it's one thing that you just said was that they died in that day. Well, it's funny how God works that way, because because He will make something be, it just hasn't come to be yet. So it's interesting. Like in His mind, He had settled the matter.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you didn't follow, what I told you. This will come to pass.
That's brilliant, because a lot of people like to rationalize. I don't know if that's the right word. They are to explain the day as, well, a day to God is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. And if you look at how old they were less than 1,000 years old. Mm-hmm. I always bought into that, but you're absolutely right. God decreed it at that moment. That the moment you eat from that, you die. Mm-hmm. That day that you eat from it, you die.
It just hasn't come to be yet.
It just hasn't come to be yet. That's really good. I like that. Mm-hmm. So, let me ask this question. Why did God give us free will?
That's a good question.
Okay. I think I can answer. Because if He had not given us free will, then everything that we do, like if He had compelled them, you shall not eat from this tree, and not given them a choice, then they're like robots. They're automaton. They don't think for themselves. Just it's a given fact that they're never going to eat from that tree.
Right.
Okay? Boring.
Right.
Boring.
And He wanted us to want it.
Right.
He wanted us to, I don't want to say earn it, but He wanted us to want it. Because if we didn't want it, there would be no passion for it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, let me ask another question. Did Satan make Eve eat from the tree?
No.
No. Mm-hmm. No. He compelled, well, not compelled her. he really enticed her, tempted her. He said, surely you won't die. But she made the choice. Okay? And, there's a lot of theologians that believe that Adam was right there the whole time, watching.
Okay.
Now, we don't know because the Bible doesn't say. It just says that she then gave it to her husband and he ate too. But again, was it the same day or was it a week later? We don't know, but more than likely, same time.
Yeah.
Okay? So if he's standing there, he knew. He knew what the laws were. He knew what God's commandments were. He was created first. And he was created to take care of her. Why did he not say, don't do that, you're going to die? Because he wanted it too. It was his choice too.
Oh, yeah, he made the choice too.
And I really believe that's why Paul says that sin came into the world through one man, Adam. It doesn't say it came through Eve, because I believe Adam sinned first by not stopping Eve from eating. He knew, because when you know something and you don't act on it, you know that God said don't do this and you do it anyway. You know that God says do this and you don't do it. That's a sin.
Right, it's a disobedience.
It's disobedience, right? So, in his disobedience, he brought sin into the world. We try to blame Eve, but I blame Adam.
Yeah.
But still, ultimately, it was their choice, their free will, to choose to eat and disobey God. Satan did not force them. He simply amplified the desire. You see, Satan can't make us do anything.
Right.
We say it all the time. The devil made me do it. Baloney. That's a cop-out.
Yeah.
That's saying, I didn't do it. Not me. The devil made me do it. No. The devil can't make you do it.
He just tempts you into it.
He tempts you. It's like, have you ever seen I'm laughing because I've done this. Have you ever seen a park bench with a sign that says wet paint?
No, I haven't. But I know what you're talking about.
And what would you do if you saw that?
I'd probably stick my finger in it to check.
That's exactly what I did. And guess what? I looked at my finger and it was red. I'm like, why did you do that? But that's what Satan does.
Right.
That's not really wet.
Yeah.
That sign's wrong.
Yeah, check and see.
Check and see, right.
Right.
And I had the choice. I didn't say, wet paint. Program says do not touch.
Right.
I had this completely wide open freedom to touch that paint.
That's right.
And I had a red finger as a result.
Yeah, you took advantage of the choice.
I did. So, free will is, if you really think about it, a tremendous gift of God. Because what would we do if we didn't have free will? Sure, we wouldn't sin.
Right.
And I just wonder, if you let me say this for a moment, I wonder if Satan someday, and this is not in the Bible, but I just wonder, after Satan said, hey, I can be like God, and God said, no, you can't, and I'm kicking you out, and we don't know what all really happened there. We'll find out someday. We can read a little bit about it in the Bible, but what if Satan said, yeah, you go ahead and create humans and be just like the rest of the angels you created, to not have a choice, and he says, okay, I'm going to give them free will. And I'm going to let them sin, and when they do, I'm going to redeem them. Just to rub it in his face.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought.
I thought that for years. It was a way for God to say, look, I will show to you that I can create something that will still choose me. Now, if we get close to God, like if we were able to just be like as far as I am from you, okay? And let's say, just for example, that you're God, okay? I know you're a little
awkward.
I know you don't want to think that. I didn't want to play Jesus in the play we had here at church either. Okay, so if you're God and I get this close to you, I'm just going to fall down and worship because of the glory that's coming off. If I were in the presence of God, I would fall down and worship just because that's how glorious God is.
Right.
I am not going to say I wouldn't have a choice, but I would do it because of how wonderful he is. So because we can choose, and because we know what sin is, and because we disobey, he keeps us away. He keeps that distance that we have with him now. Because if we were to come before him and not bow down and worship, then I believe he would have no choice but then to just ultimately destroy us from his glory coming off of him, if not from his choice.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why he sealed off the gate at the Garden of Eden and kept them away from the garden. But God's choice was to send Jesus to redeem us. Another gift.
Yes.
So, okay. So if we didn't have free will, it would be boring, wouldn't be the same, and there wouldn't be any sin either.
And we wouldn't choose to desire to have a relationship with him. It would just be, like you said, robotic. It would just be an automatic robotic thing. And that's not who he is and what he's about. He's a very agricultural, relationship-driven, that's who he is. And there's a lot of nature. He talks to us in very natural ways, and that's just who he is and what he's about. That's his business, and how he interacts with the physical world that we live in. And so free will. If we just were just robots, then would we even need to have a mind at that point?
No, we wouldn't.
Right. Like, we wouldn't need to have a mind. We wouldn't need to have any of that, because we would just more or less, for lack of a better term, be mindless recreations of him doing whatever he wanted us to do, and he wouldn't necessarily have a meaningful relationship with us.
Right.
It wouldn't be an interactive relationship.
Right.
So it's kind of it's hard to explain, but there's more to it. So, like, when he gives us free will, he also gives us free minds to challenge him and that sort of thing, which he probably doesn't always enjoy. But like you said, he enjoys bringing things to a final result.
Right.
So, like you were talking about earlier, he wanted to do this kind of thing just to create this interaction, to rub it in Satan's face.
Right.
At least that's what you're thinking, or your theory is, or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, well, that makes sense, because it's like it's interactive, which he likes to interact.
And Satan could have had this relationship with him, but chose not to.
Yeah, think about it. He did have the relationship.
Yeah. He was the morning star, the music,
right?
Yeah,
like he was the musical guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was given the talents of music, and he chose to throw all that away.
Right.
Because of his pride.
Right. Right. So we know then that some angels, at least some, have choice. And I believe, and this is just a theory, that angels can make choices, but they are not prone to sin because they've eaten from the tree of life because they're immortal. But they have not eaten from the tree of knowledge.
Yes.
Because they do not sin. They know what they are to do, not really programmed, because obviously they have a choice. Satan rebelled. Right. That was his choice. Right. But they know what is required. They know what is right. They know what is pure. They know what is true. And therefore they do based on those things. Okay? And Satan, when he rebelled, and God kicked him out, he's lost that relationship that he had. And he lost his, we know that he will burn in the lake of fire forever and ever, so he's still immortal, but he lost so much that we now can gain by, in this life, this sinful life that we live on earth, growing to know him, choosing to know him. We have the choice to not believe in him. We have the choice to follow him or to turn away from him. We have the choice to look to him for guidance or look to ourselves.
Yeah, the story of Saul,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know, he made his choices, and then God met him in his choices.
Yeah.
You know, now he doesn't do that with everybody, but that's a very interesting story to think about in those terms, you know.
Right. And Saul believed that he was making the right choices. Acts chapter 9, if you're wondering what we're talking about.
Right.
And then, yes, God said he saw his zeal, he saw his intelligence, he saw who Saul could be, and he met him in his choices and said, follow me. Saul could have said no. I just saw a demon, he could have said.
Yeah.
But he said, no, I saw the Lord. And I heard the Lord speak to me. And chose then to follow. So when we do know God and we come to know God, and I think back to my experience of coming to know God over a period of time, you know, first hearing the word spoken and hearing someone say who Jesus is, hearing someone say, you got to believe, you know, hearing these things and piecing that together, knowing that God was calling me out the whole time, not forcing me. But in my choices, I chose to follow him. And as I did, I chose more. And every day I choose more. And every day I learn more and draw closer to him more. And there are days I fall back. But I get up and move back and follow him again.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we realize that. That because we have free will, we have the choice, we are going to sin. And God knows that.
Yeah.
And not saying that God accepts that, and I say that way because acceptance is more than just giving an affirmative to this is okay. Acceptance is saying, I know this, we'll get through this.
Right.
You know, God's not saying, okay, I accept the fact that you're a sinner. He's saying, I know you're a sinner, we're going to get you through it. We're going to bring you closer to me.
Well, so the uplifting part of this could be looking at people like King David.
Sure. Yeah. Great example.
You know, like he did pretty good a lot of the time, but there was some times he didn't. You know, he made some poor choices in there of his own free will. But the funny thing is I mean, it's not funny, but like the thing is with King David was he kept coming back to God. You know, like I messed up, God. Here I am. God's like, yeah, I still need you and I still want to use you, you know.
Yeah.
And I want you to do this thing, you know. And then he'd mess up again and he'd come back to God. And the key words there is he would come back to God.
Right.
You know, it's like as we've talked about before, it's a matter of your heart. Where is your heart? So the uplifting thing for all of us is you look at these stories in the Bible, and there's all kinds of stories in the Bible about these things, you know. That's just one example. People who make mistakes, we come back to God and lay it down and say, look, God, I messed up. And God's like, yeah, like you said, I expected you to.
Yeah.
Not so many words.
I don't agree with it or accept it as that it's okay.
Right.
But I knew, and I will help you correct.
Right.
I will bring you through it.
Right.
So, and I think that's important because I know, okay, let me back up before I say that. The whole thing with Satan being the amplifier. Touch that paint, it's not wet. Eat from that tree, you won't die. You know, go ahead and take that pencil, you need a pencil, or whatever it may be. You know, just that constant speaking, and I think it's important that we say it. It's not always Satan, because Satan can't be everywhere at the same time. He can't be talking in your ear and my ear at the same time. Right. He's not omnipresent like the Lord is, like the Holy Spirit. So his demons do the talking.
Right.
He's trained them, he's taught them, they've watched him, and they've had thousands of years to work on us. So when the enemy's whispering in your ear, and you have that choice, sometimes they will say, you've gone too far. You're not going to be redeemed this time. This was the ultimate mistake. You've done way too much. And that's not true. That is so not true. And even when, and they'll say things like, well, that was a willful sin, and God doesn't forgive willful sins. No, yes, he does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful that he does, but also in a way a shame that he does, you know what I mean? Because it allows us to keep willfully sinning.
Yes, that's right.
And that's not good, because that allows the enemy to attack us. You know, I've used the example before. If you do 55 miles an hour in a 35 mile an hour zone and you get pulled over, they have a right to give you a ticket.
Right.
The cops have a right to give you a ticket to afflict you.
Right.
Now, you can go pay that and then say, okay, it's done, but it's still on your record. And, you know, when you willfully sin against God, yes, you can be forgiven, but the demons say, hey, that's still on your record, and I can afflict you until you get your record expunged. Well, we'll talk about that another time.
Expunging records?
Expunging records, yeah. But anyway, you know, that choice to sin, you also have that choice to return. Every single time.
Yeah. Well, the more things that we do wrong, the more choices that we make to do things wrong and wrong other people and even wrong ourselves, gives, like you say, it gives the enemy opportunities to make us feel guilty.
Yeah.
The guilt. And so, like, we do all these things wrong and we sin, and when we don't, you know, seek forgiveness and really have a conversation with God about the things that we do wrong and lay them at his feet and let it go, it's just more opportunities for guilt. And all, you know, all those negative feelings and all those things, and it gets worse and worse and worse the longer it goes.
Builds up.
It builds up, and then it becomes other things. It becomes depression, and it can lead to other all sorts of other things. And it makes us also have free will to do worse things. So, like, you know, like, let's say you're having a bad day, and you know, there are certain people that can relate to this thing. It snowballs. So if you have let's say you did something wrong to somebody, like let's say you got in an argument with a family member, or, you know, your husband or wife or your kids or whatever, you got into an argument and you felt bad about it. And then that caused you to have a bad, in the morning, let's say this was in the morning. Then you go to work and you have a bad day at work because you were thinking about that and you were in a bad mood and it kind of rubbed off on other people. And your day just starts snowballing downhill because you did this one thing that, you know, let's say you were in the wrong for. You drive to work, you do more things that, you know, cause other sins, and you're treating other people badly and they respond back negatively and all those sorts of things, and you had a really bad day. So let's say, okay, now I've had a really bad day, I'm just going to stop by and have a drink. And then all the sorts of things happen. So, like, you go and have a drink, and then you're depressed or whatever it is, and it can even snowball from there. You know, there's a lot of people that can relate to this, and it's like that one little thing, because you didn't stop and address it. Yeah, that leads to more and more and more, and you've made choices to do these things the whole way. So you did something wrong. That was your choice, and then you also had the choice to either make it right there and move on with your day and put it behind you, or not. And then if you didn't, then you made the choice to do other bad things throughout the day and mistreat other people potentially throughout the day. And then your choices just kept going on through the day. So we actively have all these choices. And so often we just don't make the right ones. Right. And especially when you're in the midst of, you know, being angry or just having, you know, whatever is going on, when you're in that mindset, you're more apt, you're unsettled. You're more apt to make more bad decisions because you're not settled. You're unsettled. Your foundation's not built upon the rock in that situation.
And, you know, it's important to mention that the physical aspect of our lives comes into play too. You know, if the more you keep, as you said, snowballing and your day's getting worse and worse and worse, and then you add alcohol to it. So now you're affecting your brain physically. Right. Okay. So that leaves you open to more bad choices. Okay. Or you could just be really, really tired, or, you know, maybe you just have a headache, and that can lead to other choices as well. So the buildup can be both physical and spiritual in many ways, or mental even. And just all comes together and for the perfect storm. And in that storm, who wants to turn to God?
Right.
I can tell you countless times where I knew I should turn to God in that moment, and I said, no, I am fed up with everything, including God.
Yeah.
I've said that. But the moment I did turn back to God, God didn't say, okay, you made your choice. Hey, I'm done with you. No. He said, okay, you made your choice. I'm waiting.
Yeah.
Then the next day or 2 days later, whatever, okay, here I am. You turn back to me. Well, let's clear the slate. Right. Let's start over. Right. And that's what he does.
Right.
Because a lot of people believe, and it's lies of the enemy, well, I told God this. Okay. You think God hasn't heard that before?
Right. Right. That's a great point.
Yeah. God forgives if you come back to him. The only way he won't forgive is if you don't come back to him.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. It's funny. The thing I keep thinking about is people are embarrassed to tell stuff to God.
I know, right?
He was there when you did it.
He was there before you did it.
He was there before you did it. He was there when you did it. He knows everything you do.
Right.
So you might as well get rid of the embarrassment and just let it out, because he knows more about you than you know about yourself.
Yes, he does.
He knows all your ancestors. He knows everything that will happen in your future. He knows it all. And he knows all the sort of details of everything you've ever done in your life. So you might as well just have that conversation with him, have that relationship with him, and be like, you know it anyway. Here it is.
Yeah.
Let's set this right. Let's move forward.
And it is
make that choice.
It's refreshing to do that. Confession is good for the soul, because when you confess to God, what you're doing, what you don't see, but what you're doing is you're breaking all that affliction that the enemy has that they can use against you, and you're breaking it away. I'm going to use the speeding ticket, for example.
Yeah.
When I confess to God, it's like the judge saying, okay, that's gone. Next, what was that last thing we were talking about? I didn't see anybody with a speeding ticket. It's gone, and now the cops can't say, oh, well, he was speeding. And your insurance company can't say, oh, you were speeding. Here's another $30 a month. Because it's gone. Okay, so God just kind of, it removes that so that it brings you freedom. It brings you closer to God. And you get to start clean slate, like you said. And you're absolutely right. Just, he knows. I mean, I've even said, laughingly said, God, you already know what I'm going to say, and you know what I did, but I'm saying it anyway. And I confessed it out, and it made me feel a whole lot better.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. People are too embarrassed to come to church, or how many, people, we always joke around, oh, I can't go to church, it'll fall in on me. The church will cave in on me or whatever. I mean,
You know what, Chad? This church that we're in right now is, I don't know, 160 years old?
Yeah, 100 plus years old, yeah.
Okay. Do you think that in 160 years there wasn't at least one bad person that could have caused this church to fall that came in the door? And it's still standing.
Yeah.
So it's not going to fall in on you.
That's right. Yeah, so you don't be embarrassed or afraid or anything, or don't feel you're worthy enough to go to church, because that's not the case at all. Churches aren't, for perfect people and people like Phil.
I'm not perfect.
But that's not why the church exists. Well, none of us are perfect. So that, churches are for people who want to grow and know the Lord and be with the Lord and worship Him. That's the point of it. So don't be embarrassed. Don't be, don't feel unworthy. Don't feel guilty. It's your opportunity. It's your choice of your free will to move beyond your problems, to put your problems behind you in the past. And this is oftentimes not going to be an immediate fast thing. It's just a process that we go through.
Right.
It took me a long time to get past all my junk enough to even have a good relationship to start building.
Right.
It took me a long time. And I was saved when I was 15 years old. I accepted Jesus into my life. And I read the whole. It was my summer vacation when I was 15 years old from school. My cousin, he had become a Christian at that time, and he, led me to the Lord. And I read the Bible all the way through, and I said, "This is a neat story that happened a couple thousand years ago, but it doesn't apply to me." I slammed that book shut, put it on the shelf, and went on with my life. But I still knew who God was, and I still, had a very, very minor, lukewarm relationship with Him that wasn't very good. But I made the choice to accept Him as Jesus as my Savior. I made the choice to put that book on the shelf, and I made all the choices that I made up until, at some point in the future, a couple years ago, to actually get serious with my relationship with Him. And, I made a lot of bad choices in that time period. But I also look back and realized that He was walking with me through all those things, and He kept me from doing a lot of things that would have been a lot worse. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at the time, but now I give Him praise for it, because He did keep me out of a lot of bad things that
right.
I was making bad choices that could have gotten a lot worse, or could have gotten out of hand or whatever. And He was there, kind of still quietly guiding me
right.
through the process. And then, at some point, my wife had planted seeds for me. She had been praying for me over a period of time, planting seeds, and it came time for those seeds to grow. Mm-hmm. And, it's important to realize that we make all these choices, and we make a lot of bad choices. But someday, and hopefully for everyone, that day is today, you choose differently. You choose Him.
Right.
And it's your free will to do that. And if it's not today, tomorrow. Well, sometimes it's like, how many tomorrows do we have? We don't know this. No one knows these things. And that's kind of what hit me a couple years ago. It's like, you know what? I don't know how many tomorrows I have. There's nothing imminent, but, I'd lost some people close to me. And it's just kind of a realization, like, it's time I get serious about this. Mm-hmm. And, because I think there's something better. And that's what my hope is for, people listening to this situation, listen to my conversation and a story a little bit about what I've been through. There's a better choice. And we have the free will to make it each day. And it's important. It's everything. It's your life.
Yeah.
It's our life.
So in that time, you said God was guiding you, keeping mm-hmm. you from mm-hmm. things that could have gone very seriously wrong. Mm-hmm. But you still made the choice, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. God didn't force you to not move into that situation. He gave you the thoughts.
Yeah.
And you knew to choose.
Right.
And you chose correctly. Or, I could be dead right now if I'd have made different choices
right.
a couple of times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
We probably all could, and maybe not even realize it.
Right.
Okay, but still, so we still have that free choice. But mm-hmm. when you do listen to God and you make the right choice, that keeps you going. But like Chad said, choose now that I'm going to purposely seek out God more and follow Him more and intentionally come to Him because of what we said tonight. Mm-hmm. Because it makes a difference.
Yeah, it's our life.
Yeah.
What really, when you think about it, what alternative do we have?
Yeah.
So we have to consciously make that choice.
Yep.
We know, we talk about these things. We know what's before us. We know what promises God's made for us. We know what He wants us to do, which is to have a relationship with Him. Mm-hmm. And that means so many more things for each of us individually, what His plan is for each of us individually, mm-hmm. which is all unique and different for all of us. But and even in that, we have our daily choices. Do we follow what He calls us to do with our plan, or with His plan for us? Each day, no matter, even in your situation, you're a pastor and you've been doing this for a long time. and He has a plan for you, and you have a pretty good idea of what that plan is. But you still have the choice each day: do I follow His plan or not?
Yeah.
No matter how many years you've been doing this, or what your role is, or how mature you are in your relationship with God, each day you still have a choice. Take a guy like Billy Graham.
Yeah.
The guy was in his 90s. He'd been following the Lord and His plan for him for, 50 plus years or whatever it was. Every morning when he got up and well into his 90s, he still had a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
He still had a free will. So it's important to realize that this is not a one and done thing.
Right.
It really isn't. We each day, we have this choice. Whether we follow Him or not. And it's everything.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have the choice to say right now that we're out of time.
You're always the one that Unfortunately, Phil has assumed that role for us. I don't know what we'll do next week when he's not here. We just might go for 2 hours, but that's okay.
And that would be fine.
And that'll be our 2-hour TV special. No.
Oh, that's great, Chad.
Yeah. But it was a great conversation.
It was. I really enjoyed it, and something you said, and I think that maybe sometime if the Lord wills, and we make the choice to follow, maybe we can expound on that relationship part. And what a relationship can really do for you.
Right.
It's a buzzword if you don't know what it means.
Right.
But when you know what it means, it penetrates you, and you really desire that every day. So maybe we can talk more about that sometime.
Yeah, and quickly, like you had asked me, like what it was like when I said that God was walking along with me and that sort of thing. God never made me do anything.
Right.
And what I did was looking back at it in the rearview mirror at different points. It was like I feel like God had protected me from certain things.
Sure, and He does.
Yeah, He had shielded me from things, protected me from things, and sort of that sort of thing. But it was not anything where He was forcing anything on me.
Right, yeah, He never violated your free will.
No.
Never.
No, it was just things that He was like, I'm going to protect him from this because he's not with it enough to protect himself.
Right.
And it's like a thing like that, but it was just like, He protected me from harm in certain situations and those sorts of things. But yeah, so He didn't force me to do anything, but neither did the enemy.
Right.
The enemy was just like coercing me to do things and trying to pull me away from God, which he was very successful at for a good while. Not entirely. Right, I didn't lose. I wouldn't have lost my salvation, but I didn't have that relationship.
Yep.
I didn't have that daily relationship.
Yep.
So I just wanted to kind of because you had asked, I wanted to kind of clear that up. Or explain a little bit more about it. But I think so many people are in that situation to where, there's so many people out there that they may be saved, they may come to church on Sunday, but all through the week, they're not thinking about God, they don't have the relationship with God, they're not walking in His ways all week, necessarily. That's kind of like one example. So, again, we need to get back to that relationship in the choices like you mentioned earlier.
Yep, absolutely.
So sorry, I didn't mean to get us
No, that's okay. We're still within the bounds.
Yeah, we're in the bounds. Okay.
We're in bounds, yeah. All right, well, thank you all for joining in tonight, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me
I really
too.
enjoyed talking to you. It was a good conversation, so we will see you again.
Yep.